We're going to change the boot or trunk light bulb in this Fiat Punto. The bulb that's in there from the factory is hopelessly dim, so we're going to replace it with a brighter LED. I'll talk about what type of LED to use in a minute, but first let's get the old bulb out and have a look at the enclosure that the bulb sits in. To get the enclosure out, you need to prise it out from the backwards side. My clip's actually broken, so it comes out quite easily, but assuming yours isn't, you'll need to get a screwdriver or something and wedge it into the little release slot there and prise it out. Then you'll need to disconnect it from its power plug, and again you'll need a screwdriver or something like that to depress the little clip on the plug itself to allow you to unplug it from the enclosure. And to get access to the bulb itself, you need to depress both sides of the bulb holder, and it's on a sort of a hinge, a plastic hinge, and the lens will fold away from the bulb, allowing you to access the bulb itself. Okay, so this is just a typical 5-watt T10 bulb, which is used in all sorts of applications in cars. It's really quite dim for this application. The incandescent boot light bulb in my Ford, for example, is a 10-watt bulb, so this is half the brightness that Ford is using. And this is what I've chosen to use in my case. It is a LED arrangement of 6 surface-mounted chips. There's 3 on each side. They are 5630 chips, which are quite powerful. It's not ideal. I actually would have preferred, say, 4 or 5 chips all mounted on the one side so that they could be pointing into the boot rather than having half of them pointing backwards, but I couldn't find anything with that exact configuration, so I decided that this would do. Now we'll have a look at the LED in a minute, but just for comparison, here's the original bulb. This is on a 12-volt power supply, which measures 12.05 volts. And when we measure the current, we get a total power output that is just over 4 watts. So actually slightly less than the rated 5 watts. And when we measure this LED, we get less than half the current draw, as you can see, which equates to about 1.8 watts. So less than half the power. But it is significantly brighter. I'd estimate roughly double the brightness. I'll show you some before and after shots once we've put it in the car. So before we put the bulb in, I'm just going to upgrade the enclosure a bit by adding effectively a reflector to the back of it so that we get to use the light that's being directed away from the boot, whereas before it just really gets wasted because the enclosure is just made out of this sort of opaque plastic, which certainly isn't going to reflect much of the light. So I've got this aluminium foil tape, which has its own adhesive, and you could use anything else really that comes to mind, but this is a pretty good solution, makes it very easy. So we just cut a bit to fit. We're going to make a sort of a U shape out of it and just push it into place. Use a tool like a screwdriver or some sort of flat blade to push it into place. Now when you're doing this, you need to, because it's aluminium, it's conductive obviously, so you need to be very certain to leave a gap between the electronic connectors and preferably the LED itself, because there's live electronics on that and you want to make 100% sure you don't create a short circuit. And here's a view of the of it when the tape's and when the foil's in place. If you look at this, you can see in the foil the yellow of the SMD chips as I move the angle around here, you can see the reflection, and that's an indication, of course, of the ultimate reflectivity that's going to give us that extra light output. Right, so with that all done, we close the enclosure back up again, clip it back together, and we go put it back in the car. The moment we plug it back in, it'll turn on. That's the LED itself going there that you can see. And now here are a before and after shot. This is before, and this is after. These are photos taken with identical exposure settings on the camera, so you can see this is a true representation of the difference in brightness. Nice improvement. And we're done.